Well, today, President Cyril Ramaphosa reassuring MPs in the National Assembly that funds meant for flood relief efforts in KwaZulu-Natal will not be looted. He says proper checks and balances will be put in place. There's also an ad hoc committee that's been set up for an oversight role on how that money is used. The Democratic Alliance, of course, is a bit skeptical because they're hearing about people who are not receiving aid and also about aid that's been stolen. The DA, also on a separate story, wants Parliament to investigate SCOPA chairperson Mkhuleko Hlengwa's conduct during a meeting with the Eskom board. Hlengwa asked board member Busisiwe Mavuso to behave or excuse herself from the meeting to discuss Eskom's troubles. Let's talk to the DA's Chief Whip Natasha Mazzoner. She joins us now live. Natasha, thanks for your time. We appreciate it. You've had a busy day, so let's start with what the President had to say to reassure parliamentarians that the funds meant for the flood victims in KwaZulu-Natal and other provinces will not be looted. Are you convinced?
I will be convinced once the ad hoc committee has been set up and is on the ground and is watching with a hawk's eye everything that is going on. I think that it's a very sad day that we actually have to have an ad hoc committee to make sure that funds aren't looted. But we saw what happened with the COVID-19 pandemic, and we saw how funds were looted and what it cost lives. And let's be honest, what we have in KZN is an absolute crisis. It's costing lives and livelihoods, very difficult to get things back up and running, bodies still being found, families, we extend our most sincere condolences to those who have lost loved ones, and of course will require some kind of aid from government. So yes, I think it was a very promising start. I think it's very good that this ad hoc committee is a multi-party ad hoc committee. And I have to ask myself why we didn't have an ad hoc committee like this for the COVID-19 pandemic, because I think it would have saved millions of rands that we know were looted. And I think that it goes to prove that Parliament actually does have a role, and according to the Constitution must, whether the governing party wants it or not, have ad hoc committees to oversee the executive. So I found his words promising, but I believe in action, and when I see the action happening, I will have a lot more trust.
Yeah. The Democratic Alliance leader, John Steenhuisen, is, and of course, saying that there doesn't seem to be a solid plan on how people are going to be assisted. He also raised concerns that you're hearing of aid rather, that's been stolen. And eNCA has spoken to some communities who accuse officials of actually stealing some of the aid before it gets to them. What more are you hearing in that regard from the people you have on the ground?
Well, exactly what you're hearing. We're hearing that parcels from NGOs, food parcels, feminine parcels are being stolen before they reach their destinations. I think water tankers are probably the biggest problem that they have in the province. The province has 75 water tankers, and that should serve a province of over 4 million people. That means 16,000 people per water tanker, which you can imagine is impossible. The Premier himself admitting to having a water tanker delivered right to his house, which I think the ANC should have taken action immediately. But in actual fact, he stood up in Parliament today and tried to defend his actions, which I thought was, I think the President there and there on the spot should have called him out on it. But we're hearing exactly what you're hearing, and the faster this ad hoc committee gets to work and gets on the ground itself, that means actually in the middle of things, in the thick of things, watching, every parcel being unloaded, every delivery being made, we won't be able to rest peacefully knowing that things are safe, because at the moment, officials there certainly cannot be trusted. And quite frankly, senior officials in the eThekwini Council have been missing, and we're not quite sure where they were.
All right, let's move on to Busisiwe Mavuso and Mkhuleko Hlengwa, the chairperson of the Standing Committee on Public Accounts. That altercation happening. There were so many views about this, but then the Democratic Alliance came out saying, actually, we want Hlengwa suspended for his behavior. What were you not happy with?
Well, SCOPA is one of those committees in Parliament where a whistleblower can come and tell Parliament the whole truth and nothing but the truth and expect to be protected in doing so. SCOPA is an oversight committee, as you know, and a very important institution in our Parliament. And the way in which Ms. Mavuso was asked to leave is simply unacceptable. She was incredibly brave in coming out and saying things that we all know to be true. Hlengwa coming out and saying that he asked her to leave the meeting because it was becoming politicized. Well, I think we have to admit that everything at Eskom is politicized. And we know this to be true because it's where state capture was at it was the heart of state capture. It's where everything broke with the Gupta leaked emails, and I think it's just an appalling indictment that a chairperson would dare to throw out a member of a board for giving their honest opinion. If he doesn't want the honest opinion, then he mustn't ask for the honest opinion. And what worries me tremendously, Shahan, is that other whistleblowers will see what's happened, that you show your bravery, you come to Parliament, you do what the President asks you to do, which is to tell the truth and to blow the whistle on those stealing money and those causing the problems, and you are asked to leave. And it worries me that other whistleblowers will now be too scared to come to Parliament and tell us the real truth.
Yeah, Natasha, okay, I get what you're saying. The reality is, though, that Hlengwa was trying to get accountability from the Eskom board about the current situation in the country. And Mavuso's response was, well, we can't take blame for the ANC's mess when it comes to Eskom. You know, she has a valid point. We all know that that is what happened at Eskom. But so does he when he says that we want accountability from this current administration, which he was not getting from Mavuso. And you and I know that the current Eskom board needs to account just as much as the previous boards and those in charge.
Absolutely. But the previous board, we must remember, is dealing with mess-ups that happened with Brian Molefe, Mashele Coco. These are huge issues. This current board did not build or steal on the Medupi or Kusile projects. They weren't involved with the Duva scandal. They had no idea what was going on with Kendall. They didn't sell off coal mines. They weren't in charge of the procurement of coal at costs that were much higher. And it's going to take them a while to get things back into shape. And while she was busy explaining why the problems that they were dealing with were so hard to start approaching, she wasn't given the chance to finish talking, because she explained that a lot of the problems that they are dealing with now are legacy issues, and they were caused by ANC cadre deployment. And that's when Hlengwa stood up and said that this was politics of the worst kind, or I can't remember his words exactly, and asked her to leave the meeting. And she very bravely took her goods and left. And the rest of the Eskom board stayed behind, which I think was a mistake. I think that the meeting should have been called off there and then. It's unheard of for someone to be telling their side of the story and in the middle of their story being asked to leave. So she was explaining that there are problems and they cannot reach the goals that they are aiming for, which is 23, and I believe they've reached 7 of them, because they are still dealing with problems caused by the ANC Deployment Committee itself. And as soon as the ANC was mentioned, Hlengwa asked her to leave.
Okay, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it. The DA's Chief Whip, Natasha Mazzoner.